Okay, hello YouTube. This video today I'm going to be doing on openings and more specifically how to make your opening traps work when you play chess. And before I go any further, if you like this video and if you like this kind of content, please go ahead and smash that subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. So anyway, you've just clicked on the latest, video that the YouTube algorithm has thrown at you where somebody says that 20,000 people have fallen for this trap or whatever like that. And it could be, a number of traps. Like maybe it could be something like a trap out of the Dragon Sicilian. The 11 fish variation is a very well-known trap. Like you can play this early f4 and you're threatening e5, and then if they play bishop g7, you can play this early e5, and after this exchange happens and this knight moves away, the move bishop b5 check will win material. Actually, oftentimes it'll win the queen. Sometimes it even leads to mate. The point being is that if the knight blocks on c6, we get to capture that knight on c6 and we get a fork. If anything blocks on d7, we simply take this knight for free. And if the king sidesteps with king f8, we're going to play knight e6 check, and it's a very entertaining way to win the queen. So fine. So you've searched for your trap that, however many thousands of people have fallen for, and you want to play this trap and you want to win games with it. But here's the thing. When you play an opening, when you play any opening, you're not just committing to playing that one trap that you studied. You're committing to playing everything that goes with that opening. And that's one of the things that you have to understand when you prepare. Is you have to understand everything that you're getting into every time you play a move. You have to understand the sets of openings. I like to call them opening sets. When you play this position, what you're playing is you're playing an open Sicilian, right? So when you play an open Sicilian, you're committed to playing against a lot of things. So just to get to this position after knight f6, knight c3, you might not be playing against a dragon variation. You might be playing against an e6 here. You might play against knight c6. You might be playing against a6. So that means that if you want to use your 11 fish variation trap, you have to be willing to play all of these other openings. And that also means that you need to have preparation within these openings. Now, you could try to find traps within these other openings as well. And of course, those traps will have to go with number sets as well. I mean, if you play bishops to c4 after, say, a6, going for some trap of the day, you're going to have to learn how to play against every reply to bishop c4, not just the one that leads to some trap that maybe somebody showed you in a video. So how do we prepare for all of this stuff? Well, we have to sit down and we have to go through the work. And the big thing that we have to ask ourselves is the first thing you have to do when you're trying to prepare an opening repertoire is you have to diagram out exactly like all of the openings that you're going to be playing and all of the moves that you're going to be playing. So kind of a trick that I use is I'll just kind of shadow box against myself. Like I'll sit there and go, okay, so if he plays a6, what move am I playing? And then what are the possibilities here? Now, after e6 and say bishop b3, and of course the majority of people play e6, but it's not necessary. Of course, if they don't play e6, a lot of times the positions will lead with early knight d5s, and white is typically doing better. So sometimes you can kind of eliminate like a lot of stuff. Like I don't really view b5 as something independent that I need to study without the move e6, not because people don't play it, but because any situation where somebody allows knight d5, or maybe where they allow an early bishop g5, bishop f6, and this pawn hasn't moved to e6, doesn't seem like it turns out very well for black. So I don't need to put a ton of effort into memorizing all of these various sidelines that don't seem to offer much danger to my position. So you need to focus your energy on the things that are going to be relevant. So the main two relevant moves, for example, in this Najdorf, are going to be, you're going to have knight d7, you're going to have b5, and of course knight c6, this is a transposition to the classical variation, which we would probably reach from at least one of two different move orders. We would reach that from knight c6, or we would reach that from an early pawn to e6, is the normal way that we would reach that. So here in my head, I think to myself basically of three moves that I have to face. I think to myself, I've always remembered, like, basically, I have to face, like, three openings here. I have to face the classical, right? And I have to face the Najdorf, right? And I have to face the dragon. And then here's a cute little trick that you can use. I call it crossover effect, right? Because there's actually more than three moves here, right? But there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of transpositions, and there's a lot of positions that you can play very similarly, right? Basically, if my opponent plays e6, my response to e6 is going to be bishop c4. And there's crossover at this point into the Najdorf, or there's crossover into the classical. And typically my opponent will play one of those two things. There's very little in the way of independent lines other than maybe knight a6 to c5, and even that contains some crossover of its own. Okay, so there's going to be some crossover where you can play a lot of the same stuff or a lot of the same ideas against other things. Actually, one of the cool ideas that I had back when I played the Dragon was I used the crossover concept of the idea that I can play similar ideas in the Dragon, or I can play similar ideas in the Najdorf if my opponent decides to play certain moves that aren't compatible with those openings, right? So, for example, if I played the Najdorf and my opponent played something goofy like an early queen f3, and I wasn't sure what to do, I could play the move pawn to g6 because I knew that the move pawn to g6 wasn't normally a good move in the Dragon. The move pawn to queen, the move queen f3 wasn't normally a good move against g6. So queen f3 isn't normally a good move in the Dragon, because in the Dragon, white usually likes to take the Yugoslav approach, where he puts his queen on d2, bishop on e3, and then pawn on f3. And of course, this queen is nowhere near d2. It's going to have to take two moves to get back there. So it makes sense to turn this back into a Dragon. And I would do typically the same thing, even against moves like, say, a4. I would play g6 and go into a Dragon, or a move like h3. Basically, any move, if I played a Najdorf, any move that wasn't compatible with a Dragon, I would immediately change it into a Dragon, because a6 is not typically a wasted move in a Dragon. And you can use this crossover concept, you can use this concept of a crossover of middle game ideas, or transposition with tempo, is another way to put it. You can use this concept to streamline a lot of your preparation, so you don't have to look at, dozens and dozens of openings to build your repertoire. Sometimes you can boil that number down to a number that's quite a bit more manageable, and then you're only studying, 5, 6, 7, 8 different lines, so that it just becomes a lot more likely that you're going to get to your favorite trap, right? That you're going to get to your favorite idea. These concepts and these traps, like I'll give you an example, like one of my favorite traps in the Fischer-Sozin variation is this idea that happens after bishop to b3, b5, bishop g5, bishop e7, queen f3. And I have, a half dozen traps that I really love in here. One of them is after bishop b7, I can take on e6 and get nearly a winning position. Another trap that I've loved in the past was after queen b6, I would actually sacrifice this knight, and if they take it, the move pawn to e5 leads to a nearly winning position, although I don't play that one as much anymore because almost nobody falls for it. So these days, after they play queen b6, I'll usually castle queenside, because a lot more people are falling for this trap these days, where they play b4 and they play knight f5. And what's interesting is this idea of b4 and knight f5, there's a lot of crossover here too, because this concept works against both the move queen b6 and the move queen c7. So I don't necessarily have to study those lines, queen b6 and queen c7. I don't have to necessarily study them independently of each other, because a lot of the ideas in both of those lines are very similar. And I can maybe utilize my same trap against both moves, because the positions aren't different enough that I have to necessarily change what I'm doing. Okay, so that's the secret. If you want to play that YouTube trap that, 20,000 players have fallen for, you have to think about your whole opening repertoire, and you have to think about how you're going to build that repertoire. And there's some little tips and tricks in here to save some time, and there's a lot of crossover of ideas from one opening to another, so that you can build that repertoire and you can have a solid repertoire, and you can use a lot of those same ideas in the same way in different positions, sometimes over and over and over again, and it'll really help improve your results. It'll streamline your study time, and it'll just make studying openings a lot funner, and it'll make it a lot more enjoyable. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you learned something new about chess, and once again, if you like this kind of content, please smash that subscribe button. Thank you very much for watching.